12 executives walked out while I was pitching. The COO called me a failure, and they all left me sitting there alone. So I made one call, said 7 words, and by 4 p.m., 9 of them were cleaning out their offices for good. The projection screen still burned with the red bars of failure metrics when they stood up. All 12 of them. 12 executives in tailored suits, faces hard and empty, chairs scraping back in perfect unison. I froze mid-sentence. My voice cracked on the word fatality. "Enough," said Cole Baxter, the COO, in that low, arrogant voice that always filled a room without needing volume. "We're done wasting time on this." The others didn't speak. They didn't need to. The synchronized rustle of designer fabric said everything: disgust, dismissal, unity. I stood there, hand half raised toward the screen where my slides showed what they didn't want to see. Falsified safety results, hundreds of defective units shipped to hospitals, machines that could fail mid-surgery. "This presentation is a waste," Baxter added, buttoning his jacket. A few of them smirked. Vivian Rhodes, VP of Operations, was the worst. Her smile stretched polite and cruel at the same time. "You're mistaking speculation for evidence, Mara," she said. "Maybe you should ask yourself if you're really ready for this level of responsibility." Her words sliced deeper than they should have. They filed out of the room in a tight line, their shoes clicking like a metronome of power. All 12 of them. No one said goodbye. No one even glanced at the chart still glowing behind me, proof of their negligence. The last to leave was Alan Monroe, the CFO. He lingered by the doorway, his hand hovering over the light switch. "Don't bother finishing," he said. "No one's going to read your report." Then click. Darkness. Only the pale blue glow from my projector lit the room. My own voice echoed in my head. The humiliation, the disbelief, the rage, they all collided until something inside me snapped into perfect stillness. They'd done exactly what I'd expected them to do. Walked out. Denied everything. Made it personal. I opened my phone, scrolled to the number I'd saved weeks ago but prayed I'd never need. When the call connected, a calm voice answered. "They did it," she asked. I stared at the faint reflection of my face on the dark glass wall, tired, furious, dangerous. "All of them," I said. "It's all recorded." Silence for a heartbeat. Then, "Good," the voice said. "Give me 3 hours." I hung up, turned toward the flickering screen, and whispered to the empty room, "You should have kept listening." Because what none of them knew, what no one in that building suspected, was that their walkout wasn't an escape. It was the trigger, and I had just pulled it. My name's Mara Ellison, and until 3 months ago, I was the Director of Quality Assurance at Dynaxon Industries, a company so massive it had its own zip code. Our equipment was everywhere: hospitals, government buildings, even schools. Stuff people trusted with their lives. When they hired me, they called it a strategic fix. "We need someone with your integrity," Cole Baxter said in the interview, leaning back with that fake executive warmth. "Just clean up some inefficiencies. Fresh eyes, that's all." He said it like the company was a little messy, not corrupt to the bone. I should have seen it then, the rehearsed tone, the way he smiled without blinking. But I was tired of consulting gigs and wanted stability. So I said yes. My first day, everything looked perfect. Polished glass walls, smiling faces, efficiency slogans plastered everywhere. Integrity, innovation, safety. Except the eyes didn't match the words. That same afternoon, during my facility tour, a technician named Nadia Cruz showed me around. 8 years there. Quiet, professional. But every time we passed a camera, her shoulders stiffened. When we reached the testing lab, I asked about failure tracking procedures. Her voice went flat. "We follow established protocols." But her eyes flicked toward the corner camera, toward the red blinking light. That was the first sign something was wrong. The second came when I started reviewing data. The production numbers didn't match the testing reports. Machines that failed inspection were somehow marked approved. I thought it was a clerical error. Then I found the signatures, dozens of them, all from the same 3 people: Baxter, Rhodes, and Monroe. When I brought it up in a private meeting, Baxter smiled like I was a child who'd asked where babies came from. "Mara, we have acceptable tolerance levels. The real world isn't a lab." The next morning, my company bank account showed a performance bonus. $30,000. Unscheduled. Unexplained. I declined it. That's when the emails started. Friendly, reminders about aligning my reporting style with corporate tone, subtle digs in leadership calls, quiet isolation. Then one night, around 11 p.m., I got an anonymous email. No sender name, no subject line, just one line of text. Tomas wasn't sick. Attached were archived safety reports, older versions of the ones in our system. In the originals, multiple product failures had been documented. In the final versions on our server, those failures had vanished. Tomas Vargas was my predecessor, the man they claimed had resigned for health reasons. But those files told a different story. Someone had been covering up dangerous defects, and Tomas had been documenting it right up until the day he disappeared. That was when I stopped being the naive hire they thought they could control, and I started building something else. Evidence. One encrypted file at a time. By week 6, the silence around me had changed. People still smiled when I passed, but it was different. Smiles that ended too soon, whispers that stopped too quickly. Every move I made was being watched. I could feel it. When I brought up inconsistencies during weekly operations reviews, Vivian would cut me off with that professional venom she'd perfected. "The customers are satisfied," she'd say. "But they're not safe," I'd answer. Every time I pushed back, another door quietly closed. Meetings I wasn't invited to, reports I couldn't access, system credentials that suddenly expired. Then came the accident. One of our flagship units failed in a children's hospital in Denver. A life support system. The internal memo said user error. But the version forwarded to me, by mistake, contained a buried data log showing a software fault that should have triggered a full recall. I forwarded it to Baxter. He didn't respond for 3 days. Then a single-line email came back. "Do not distribute this further, handled internally." That's when I knew. The cover-up wasn't isolated. It was standard operating procedure. I started printing everything: emails, test data, logs. I stored them offsite in a small storage unit registered under a fake name. 2 days later, security asked me to surrender my company laptop for updates. When I got it back, my private folders were gone. Then one night, as I left the office, I saw headlights behind me. Same car 3 nights in a row, no plates visible. I started parking 2 blocks away and taking the stairs instead of the elevator. One morning, I found a note slipped under my office door. Typed, "No signature. You're next. Leave before it's too late." I knew then it wasn't paranoia. Someone wanted me gone, maybe worse. That same afternoon, I went to HR, but the director, Janelle, wouldn't even meet my eyes. "Mara, you're making people uncomfortable," she said carefully. "We're a family here." A family that eats its week, I thought. But then something unexpected happened. Nadia, the same quiet technician who'd shown me the lab, approached me in the parking garage. Her hands were shaking so bad she dropped her keys. "They're going to blame you," she whispered. "Baxter says your report is an exaggeration. He's already drafted your termination letter." I grabbed her wrist. "Why are you telling me this?" Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. "Because Tomas tried to stop them too. And what they did to him," she stopped, glancing toward a passing security guard. "He didn't just resign. He disappeared." That word stuck to me like ice. Disappeared. That night I drove straight home, locked every door, and stared at my laptop until sunrise. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. If they wanted a quiet dismissal, they'd picked the wrong woman. I scheduled a full presentation for the following Friday. Invite only, all senior executives required. Subject line: Safety Breach Summary, Internal Audit Findings. But what I didn't include in the invite was that one of my slides, just one, contained evidence that could send half of them to prison. And I wasn't planning to show it yet. 3 nights before the presentation, I got another anonymous message. Same blank sender, no subject, just 3 words this time: "Tomas didn't run." Attached was a single photo, grainy, low light, time-stamped 6 weeks after his supposed resignation. It showed Tomas sitting at a diner booth in Cincinnati. Across from him, Alan Monroe, the CFO. That stopped my heart. Tomas wasn't gone. He was alive. But the way Monroe's body language looked in the photo, leaning in, cornering him, didn't feel like a friendly meeting. I called the number I had for Tomas from old records. Disconnected. I tried his wife next. No answer. Then finally, a text came through from an unknown number. "Stop digging. He's not the same anymore." It was from his wife. The next day, Nadia came to my office pretending to drop off lab reports. She shut the door behind her, eyes darting to the security camera. "There's something you need to see," she whispered, sliding me a flash drive. "What's on it?" I asked. "Footage," she said, "from the night Tomas left." I plugged it in after she left. The file was labeled simply Exit Cam 32, MP4. The video showed Tomas leaving the building late at night, carrying a box of files. He looked exhausted, panicked. Then, as he reached the parking lot, 2 security guards stopped him. They weren't our usual guys. No uniforms, no badges. The video cut there, but the metadata didn't. The timestamp ran another 14 minutes past what the video displayed, blank footage. When I asked it about the missing data, they told me there wasn't supposed to be a camera 32. Except I had the footage to prove it existed. That night I called Nadia again, voice shaking. "Where did you get this?" She hesitated. "Tomas sent it to me, weeks before he left, said if anything happened to him, someone had to keep it." The truth slammed into me so hard I couldn't breathe. Tomas hadn't left willingly. He'd been forced out. And now, whoever orchestrated that cover-up was about to realize they'd made the same mistake twice, because I was about to expose them in front of everyone. But I also knew the second I walked into that meeting, I was walking into a trap. So I made one more call to someone who'd been quietly watching the same company from the outside for over a year. Eliza Warren, senior investigator for the Federal Regulatory Agency. I told her everything. She listened in silence, then said, "You'll go through with the presentation. You'll let them do what they're planning. Just make sure everything's recording." So I did. And 3 days later, when 12 executives walked out of my meeting, scoffing and smirking, they had no idea that every cruel word, every arrogant gesture, every second of that humiliation was live-streamed straight to Eliza's encrypted database. And the moment Monroe flipped the lights off, he just sealed his own indictment. After the walkout, I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just sat there in the half-dark, the projector light flickering against the walls, and started planning their downfall. By the time Eliza's team arrived at her field office, I had already uploaded everything: audio, video, data logs, internal emails, even the footage of Tomas. She called me back within minutes. "They just handed you everything we needed," she said. "We'll move in tonight." But I wasn't done. I wanted them to feel it, so I started preparing my second act. First, I replaced my company laptop's backup drives with clean clones that contained the unedited safety reports. Thousands of pages they thought they'd erased. Then I used the company's internal task system to schedule a quality review debrief for 9 a.m. Monday, visible only to upper management. Attached to the invite, a single link labeled Executive Performance Review Confidential. Inside that link sat every piece of evidence Eliza's team would need, along with a timed trigger that would automatically email it to every board member if the file was opened or deleted. It was bait, and it worked. That Friday night, Baxter called me. His voice was calm, too calm. "You embarrassed a lot of people today, Mara. I'm willing to chalk it up to stress if you sign a non-disclosure and walk away quietly." "Walk away from what?" I asked. "From something you don't understand," he said. "You've been given a warning, don't make us escalate." He hung up before I could answer. But the us told me everything. He wasn't acting alone. The next day, I noticed my office access badge had stopped working. My email account was locked out. Then a courier showed up at my apartment with an envelope. "Termination notice, signed by Vivian Rhodes, effective immediately." She'd done it on a weekend, before Eliza's team could even move. I stared at the letter until the ink blurred. Then I smiled. They thought they'd erased me from their system. They didn't realize they'd just triggered the automated email blast to the entire board. By Sunday morning, 4 directors had already viewed the files. By Monday, regulators would be in their lobby. And me, I'd be right there to watch it unfold. I laid out my gray suit pressed and ready. Not a victory outfit, not yet. More like armor. Because the next day wasn't just about revenge, it was about survival. I had no idea, though, that before the sun came up, something else was already in motion. Something Eliza hadn't told me. Something that made the entire investigation far more dangerous than either of us realized. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside my window made me jump. The city felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. At 2:17 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Eliza. "Change of plans. Meet me in person before you go in tomorrow. 7 o'clock am, garage level 3. It was strange. She never used unsecured messages. When I arrived, the parking garage was nearly empty except for a black sedan idling near the far wall. Eliza stepped out, trench coat, clipboard, every bit the investigator I knew. But her eyes looked different. Harder. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "What's going on?" She handed me a folder. Something came up in the Tomas files. I opened it. Inside were printed screenshots, old encrypted chats between Tomas and someone listed only as EW. EW, my chest went cold. "Eliza, that's you." Her face didn't move. "Yes, Tomas was my informant. I brought him in, but things got complicated when he got scared." "Scared of who?" She hesitated just a second too long. "Of me," I asked. Her eyes finally softened. "Mara, listen, Tomas made a mistake. He sold partial data to the company before he went dark. They paid him off to bury it, but not before I copied his files. He thought he could protect himself by cooperating with both sides. It didn't end well." My hands shook. "You're telling me he was working with you and them?" "Yes, and that's why you're in danger now. Monroe found out someone else has his old data. They've been trying to figure out who since Friday." I stared at her, every nerve screaming that she wasn't telling me everything. "Why the sudden meeting?" "Because they know about the transfer logs. If they connect them to you, they'll move before the agents arrive." But then she said something that made my blood freeze. "You're not the only one they're coming for. Nadia's missing." The world tilted. "What?" "Her apartment's empty, phone's off. She was the last person Tomas emailed before his departure. They think she gave you the footage." My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. That was when I noticed something. Eliza's car had no agency plates. No insignia, nothing. "Where's your team, Eliza?" She didn't answer. I took a step back. "You said you were working for the Federal Regulatory Division." "I was," she said quietly. "Until they shut my investigation down 18 months ago." I felt like I'd been punched. "You're not with the agency anymore." She met my eyes, steady and cold. "Not officially. But you and I want the same thing." I shook my head, disbelief flooding me. "You used me." "I protected you," she said. "Because you're the only one who can finish what Tomas started. He wasn't silenced by the company, Mara. He was silenced by the people who wanted to keep this scandal profitable. And those people don't work at Dynaxon, they own it." Behind her, a car door slammed somewhere in the garage. Footsteps echoed. Eliza turned toward the sound. "You need to leave. Now." She shoved the folder back into my hands and whispered one last thing before she ran toward the stairwell. "If you want the truth, check page 17. By the time I reached my car, she was gone. I opened the folder, flipping to page 17. And there it was, a single printed email from Baxter to a private account under the name E. Warren Corp. She hadn't been just Tomas's handler. She'd been on their payroll too. By dawn, the world had stopped feeling real. I sat in my car outside the Dynaxon headquarters, staring at the folder Eliza gave me. Page 17 burned in my mind, the proof that she wasn't just a rogue investigator. She'd been inside the company all along. When I walked into the building, my badge didn't work anymore, but the security guard waved me through without question. I wasn't invisible anymore, just irrelevant. That was fine. They'd all see me soon enough. Inside the folder were more emails between Baxter, Monroe, Vivian, and Eliza herself, each one worse than the last. They weren't just covering up bad testing data. They were manipulating federal inspection cycles to delay mandatory recalls. It was bigger than negligence. It was strategy. They'd built an entire system around fake compliance by bribing third-party auditors, by burying accident reports under legal mediation, by using inside connections to influence oversight decisions. And the most horrifying part, they had partners in the hospitals themselves. Procurement directors who received kickbacks for continuing to purchase the defective equipment even after failure reports. One of those hospitals, Cincinnati General, the same facility where a child died on an operating table last year after one of Dynaxon's devices shut down mid-surgery. It had been written off as human error. But I had the internal thread now. Emails marked urgent containment strategy, Cincinnati incident, sent by Eliza herself. She wasn't protecting patients. She was protecting profits. That's when I understood. Eliza hadn't helped Tomas gather evidence. She'd helped bury it. And when he got cold feet, she'd orchestrated his disappearance. The footage of him leaving that night, it wasn't an exit, it was a handoff. Tomas had been delivering the files straight into Eliza's hands, believing she was his ally. And when he realized who she really worked for, he vanished. Now, she'd used me to finish what he couldn't. Clean the trail, flush out what was left, make the company implode. So she and the investors pulling the strings could walk away untouched. The so-called regulators were complicit. And Dynaxon wasn't some malfunctioning machine. It was an experiment in how far power could stretch before it broke. By the time the agents stormed the lobby that afternoon, I knew the truth. The executives hadn't walked out of my meeting because they were guilty. They'd walked out because they were finished. Their job was done. The damage had been irreversible for months. They'd already sold the company, quietly, through shell firms, to a conglomerate run by Eliza's parent corporation. Every ruined life, every silenced whistleblower, every unsafe machine, that was the cost of their exit strategy. Their cover-up wasn't a desperate attempt to survive. It was the blueprint of their success. They hadn't underestimated me. They'd used me to trigger the final collapse, to destroy what was left, so they could rebrand under a new name with a clean slate. I was their fire alarm, their scapegoat, their smokescreen, and I'd walked right into it. But what they didn't know, what none of them could have planned for, was that I had one last recording. The one conversation they thought was private. The one that would finally burn all of them down. The morning of the emergency board meeting felt too bright, like the sky hadn't gotten the memo that the world was ending. I wore gray again. Clean lines, no makeup, just control. Every executive in that building thought they were walking into a damage control session. They had no idea they were walking into their own execution. When I entered the boardroom, 23 people were waiting, directors, attorneys, the remaining leadership. The mood was tense, metallic. Baxter was already pacing. Vivian stared at her phone like she was expecting divine intervention. Monroe sat stiff and pale, the color of paper. "Miss Ellison," the board chair began, "we understand you were terminated yesterday. Yet, somehow, this morning your files appeared in our systems with your credentials. Would you care to explain?" I connected my tablet to the presentation feed. The screen flickered to life, and the first slide was not what they expected. It wasn't the product failures or the testing logs, it was audio. "If this goes public, we blame her. She's the perfect mark." Baxter's voice, then Vivian's. "Make it look like she planted the falsified data. We'll terminate quietly, settle, and reset before the acquisition closes." The room went dead silent. I watched them freeze, 12 people who had believed themselves untouchable. That recording was from a meeting 3 weeks ago, caught by the same voice-activated recorder I'd hidden under the conference table. "You thought I didn't know," I said quietly. "But I did. Every word, every file transfer, every payout, every bribe." Baxter slammed his hand on the table. "You have no authority, actually," interrupted a voice from the doorway. It was Agent Reyes, the real federal investigator, the one Eliza had been impersonating. He stepped in, flanked by 2 agents holding warrants. "Miss Ellison has been assisting us for several months," he said evenly. "We've been tracking a parallel investigation into corporate fraud, insider trading, and regulatory manipulation." Baxter went white. Monroe's hands started to shake. "Where's Eliza?" I asked. Reyes looked at me grimly. "Gone. She left her office 36 hours ago. We believe she's on the run." Vivian's voice broke. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, but I can," I said, switching to the next slide. It wasn't numbers this time. It was a map, every shell company, every offshore account, every transaction Eliza and the executives had touched. All traced back to E. Warren Corp Holdings, filed under the same network that now controlled the acquisition rights to Dynaxon's assets. Their plan had been to collapse the company, liquidate it under bankruptcy protection, and rebuild it under a new name, Helix Systems. But every one of those transactions had been time-stamped and mirrored through the company's cloud backups before they could erase them. They had built their empire on a lie, and I had just turned their own digital fortress against them. Reyes nodded to his team. "Begin arrests." By the time the clock hit 10:15 a.m., 9 executives were in custody. The rest sat in stunned silence as the board voted to suspend operations indefinitely. As for Eliza, she was declared a fugitive within days. Her accounts frozen. her name blacklisted. In the weeks that followed, news broke across every network. Dynexon's stock collapsed by 61%. Hospitals began replacing their faulty units. Families of victims filed lawsuits backed by the evidence I'd given Rays. It wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. But it was justice. I resigned formally 2 weeks later, packed a single box, and left that building for the last time. The last email I received before deleting my company account was from Nadia. They found Tomas's remains outside Cincinnati. Thank you for finishing what he started. I sat in my car for a long time after reading that. Justice had a body count, but at least now it meant something. 3 months later, I got a call from a hospital board in Seattle. They wanted a consultant to help identify compromised medical equipment. I accepted. Sometimes, revenge doesn't look like destruction. Sometimes, it looks like making sure people like them never get the chance to rebuild. Before I hung up the phone, I looked out at the skyline and whispered, "You wanted to erase me, but I'm the one writing the story now." And for the first time in months, the silence didn't feel dangerous. It felt like peace.